The clinking of silverware on fine china echoed through the Carter estate's grand dining hall, where chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, and the smell of roast duck filled the air. It was the annual Carter family celebration, an ostentatious affair that doubled as a ranking system for who was doing well enough in the eyes of the family patriarch. Lauren Carter sat at the far end of the table, next to the kids' corner, though she was 32. Her brother Mark, now a senior partner at a corporate law firm in D.C., held court at the head of the table, next to their father. Her sister Danielle, a plastic surgeon with a massive online following, sipped wine while talking loudly about her latest celebrity nose job. And then there was Lauren, the idealist, as her family mockingly called her. She'd left a high-paying job at Holton Barrowman 4 years ago to start Justice Bridge, a non-profit legal aid center for low-income families, veterans, and the wrongly evicted. It was her calling. But in this house, it was a punchline. "Still doing your little charity thing, Lore?" Mark asked with a smirk, cutting his filet mignon with surgical precision. "I run a non-profit legal center. We just won a housing rights case that helped 37 families avoid illegal eviction," she answered calmly. Danielle rolled her eyes. "So, no paycheck, no promotion, just moral points?" Their father, Judge Edward Carter, who once presided over the state appellate court, looked down his nose at her. "You had real potential, Lauren. Wasting your JD on handouts isn't a career. It's sentimentality." A silence fell over her side of the table. Lauren swallowed the lump in her throat. She'd heard this all before. She didn't need validation from them, but it still stung. It always did. In their world, success had to come with a title, a corner office, or a seven-figure salary. What she built didn't fit into their frame. But what no one at the table knew, what they were about to find out, was that one of the guests arriving late tonight would change everything. And when she walked in, she would ask for Lauren by name. The soft murmur of conversation returned to the room, though Lauren could still feel the sting of their words like invisible thorns pressed against her skin. She took a quiet sip of water, offering a polite smile to her younger cousins seated beside her, and tried to refocus on the moment. No matter how many times she told herself she didn't need their approval, it always felt like she was 12 again, showing her report card, hoping someone would say, "I'm proud of you." Just then, the butler cleared his throat at the grand double doors. "Excuse me, Judge Carter," he announced with a slight bow. "There's a guest who has just arrived. She insists she's here by personal invitation." Heads turned. "Did someone forget to RSVP properly?" Danielle whispered, sipping her wine. "Maybe it's another one of Mark's groupies." Lauren ignored the snide comment, but her stomach tensed. The butler opened the doors, and into the grand room walked a woman of unmistakable presence. She was tall, elegant, in her mid-60s, with short silver blonde hair styled with precision. Her tailored navy suit was adorned with a small American flag pin on the lapel. Every movement she made exuded poise and confidence, like someone who was used to commanding attention without asking for it. Several people gasped. Edward Carter stood slowly from his seat. "Is that—" one of the guests muttered. Mark's fiancée leaned toward him and whispered, "That's Eleanor Graves, the senator's wife." Indeed it was. Eleanor Graves, wife of Senator Jonathan Graves, chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee, and one of the most recognizable political couples in the country. Eleanor scanned the table for a moment, then, much to everyone's shock, her eyes landed on the far end. "Lauren," she said, her voice warm and reverent, "I'm so glad you're here." Lauren blinked. "Mrs. Graves?" Eleanor smiled. "May I?" She gestured toward the empty seat next to Lauren. Before Lauren could even respond, the older woman was already making her way toward her, heels clicking lightly across the polished marble floor. The room had gone dead silent. Danielle nearly choked on her wine. Mark was frozen mid-bite. Eleanor sat down beside Lauren, placing a manicured hand over hers. "I hope this isn't awkward. I insisted they let me in. I just had to meet you in person." The entire table now looked as though a bomb had gone off. Edward Carter, still standing, looked bewildered. "Mrs. Graves," he began, "to what do we owe this unexpected visit?" She turned politely but firmly toward him. "Judge Carter, I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to thank your daughter." Now it was Lauren's turn to look confused. "Thank me?" "Yes. Eleanor said, her eyes softening. A few weeks ago, a man named Walter Hicks came to your center. A disabled veteran, homeless, on the verge of losing the last of his VA benefits because of a paperwork error. His appeal had been denied. He didn't have the energy or the voice to fight it anymore. Lauren remembered. Mr. Hicks, Vietnam vet, legally blind, we fought hard for that case. Eleanor nodded. He served in the same platoon as my husband. They were foxhole brothers. John didn't even know Walter was still alive until I tracked him down. If you hadn't stepped in, Walter would have lost everything. Instead, because of you, he's now in transitional housing, his benefits restored, and even started reconnecting with his son. Lauren's eyes widened. I didn't know all that. You didn't have to, Eleanor said gently. But I did, and I told my husband. You'll be receiving a formal letter of commendation from the Senate committee next week. At the head of the table, no one moved, no one breathed. Eleanor turned back to Lauren. I just had to come here myself and say thank you for not chasing the title or the paycheck, but doing the real work, the kind that matters. Lauren swallowed hard. The lump in her throat now was from something entirely different. Eleanor stood. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I know I will now. And with that, she gave Lauren's shoulder a gentle squeeze and left, leaving behind a room full of stunned silence. The silence that followed Eleanor Graves's exit was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop, or the sound of every assumption in the room shattering like glass. Lauren sat frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the eyes of the entire table on her. Not with ridicule this time, but something else. Something closer to disbelief. Or shame. Mark was the first to move. He slowly set his fork down, clearing his throat. You know the senator's wife? Lauren looked up, her voice steady. I didn't. I only knew her husband's old friend. He was one of my clients. He didn't have anyone else. Danielle leaned forward, her tone softer now. You helped a senator's war buddy, and you never said anything? Lauren raised an eyebrow. Why would I? You all made it clear my work wasn't worth talking about. Their father, Edward Carter, the man whose gavel once dictated the fate of courtrooms, was now visibly rattled. You've been working on federal-level cases? No, Dad, Lauren said, choosing her words carefully. I've been working on people the system forgot, people who don't have the luxury of hiring firms like yours. The children at the table fidgeted nervously, sensing the shift in energy. Their parents, once proudly dismissive, were now awkwardly silent. Mark leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his perfect hair. I mean, damn, Lore. A commendation from the Senate? You didn't think that was worth bringing up? Lauren offered a calm smile. I didn't think it would matter in this room. Danielle shifted uncomfortably. Okay, but still, it's kind of amazing. No, Lauren corrected gently. It's important. But it shouldn't take a senator's wife for it to be amazing to you. For the first time in her life, the power dynamic had shifted, and she wasn't doing anything different. She was just seen. A moment later, one of the younger cousins, 12-year-old Emma, spoke up timidly. Aunt Lauren, can I come visit your office someday? I want to help people too. That was the moment that made Lauren's throat tighten. She blinked rapidly, reaching for her water to keep from getting too emotional. Of course, Emma, I'd love that. Their father finally sat down. He looked older somehow, less like the towering judge she grew up with, and more like a man struggling to reconcile a reality he never allowed himself to consider. I suppose I underestimated the value of what you do, he admitted, voice low. I'm not proud of that. Lauren met his eyes. I never needed you to be proud, Dad. I just wanted you to stop being disappointed. That landed like a stone in the center of the table. A few more seconds passed before Mark stood up and raised his glass. Well, looks like the real winner at this table tonight isn't me or Danielle. It's the one we laughed at. He held up his wine. To Lauren, for proving us all wrong. Lauren didn't raise her glass right away. She scanned the faces around her. Embarrassment, humility, a few lingering doubts, but mostly recognition. Maybe for the first time ever. She lifted her glass. To Walter Hicks, and all the others who deserve better than what the world gave them. The family echoed her toast. To Walter. The evening carried on, now with an entirely different energy. Lauren didn't need the applause, but watching her family squirm, soften, and finally listen was more satisfying than she ever imagined. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like a stranger at her own family's table. She felt like a force. 2 days after the dinner, Lauren sat at her usual spot inside Justice Bridge, her small but vibrant legal aid center tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop on Franklin Street. The hum of the coffee maker, the clack of keyboards, and the low voices of her volunteer team filled the air. Despite the praise and toast back at the Carter estate, Lauren had slipped back into her work without fanfare. She had 3 eviction cases on her desk and a new veteran referral coming in that afternoon. Life hadn't changed, but something inside her had. There was a new steadiness to her confidence now, a quiet, earned authority. Then came the call. "Lauren Carter?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, speaking. This is Anna Coleman, special assistant to Senator Jonathan Graves." The senator was deeply moved by what his wife shared after the dinner. "He'd like to meet with you, personally." Lauren straightened in her chair. "Oh, I wasn't expecting that." "He's extending an invitation to join his policy advisory board on veterans legal support. It's a paid position, and if you're open to it, there's interest in appointing you as director of the National Legal Equity Initiative under the Department of Justice." Lauren sat in stunned silence. It was everything her family would consider success. A prestigious federal position, salary, influence, the Carter name finally associated with a national title again. But Lauren felt something tug inside her. "Can I take a day to think about it?" she asked. "Of course, just know it's fast moving. He wants to announce the team next week." After she hung up, Lauren stared at the legal pad in front of her, covered in notes about a local landlord illegally changing locks on tenants. She thought about Mrs. Mayfield, the 78-year-old woman she was helping stay in her home. About Carl, the Gulf War vet she'd spent weeks tracking down legal documents for. Would she be helping more people at the federal level? Or would she be buried under layers of bureaucracy, red tape, and political image management? That night, she met with her closest friend and co-founder, Jada Monroe, at a small Ethiopian cafe they loved. "You should be proud," Jada said. "That offer means people are finally seeing what I've known for years." Lauren poked at her food. "But do I want to leave what we've built?" Jada leaned in. "I think the question is, can you do more from the inside? Or will they try to change you while you're in there?" Lauren sighed. "That's what I'm afraid of." The next morning, she stood in front of the faded Justice Bridge sign before unlocking the front door. The letters were chipped. The window needed cleaning. But this was home. This was real. She picked up the phone and called Anna back. "Please thank the senator," she said. "Truly, I'm honored. But I'll have to decline." There was a pause. "Are you sure, Ms. Carter? This is a rare opportunity." "I know, but I already have the opportunity I fought for. Right here, on the ground, with people who don't have anyone else." She hung up heart full, not because she turned down power, but because she chose purpose. And that made all the difference. Spring came early to Franklin Street that year. The sun lingered a little longer in the late afternoons, and the sidewalks buzzed with neighbors carrying groceries, children skipping beside their parents, and the occasional bark from a dog tied outside the corner bodega. Inside Justice Bridge, things were busier than ever. Since word of Eleanor Graves' visit had gotten out, and especially after Lauren declined the senator's offer, calls had doubled. Lawyers from across the state reached out offering pro bono hours. Donations increased. A local journalism major even started an Instagram page sharing case victories under the tag #Justice Bridge Wins. But what truly warmed Lauren's heart wasn't the attention. It was the people walking through the door. People like Mrs. Henderson, who brought in cookies every Thursday just to say thanks. Or the high school student who shadowed the team for a civics project and ended up applying to pre-law because of Lauren. And then there was Emma. True to her word, Lauren's 12-year-old cousin showed up every weekend, notebook in hand, full of questions. "Do people cry a lot when they lose their homes?" she asked once, wide-eyed. Lauren didn't sugarcoat it. "Sometimes, but that's why we fight so they don't have to." Emma beamed. "I'm gonna help you someday. I already made a folder called Law School Stuff." Lauren laughed, her heart swelling. Maybe this was legacy, not plaques or boardrooms, but a seed planted in the next generation. One rainy Thursday, as Lauren was packing up for the day, her assistant Carla peeked into the office. "There's someone here to see you. No appointment. Says his name's Walter. Lauren's breath caught. She stepped into the front area, and there he was. Walter Hicks, older than she remembered. His beard had grown out, snow-white and trimmed. He wore a crisp navy blazer, a cane in one hand, and a veteran's honor pin on his lapel. "Mr. Hicks," she said, stunned, "you look incredible." He chuckled. "Got myself cleaned up. VA housing, new glasses, started volunteering at a senior center. Guess I owe all that to you." Lauren felt tears prick her eyes. "You don't owe me anything." He stepped forward, holding out a small wrapped object. "I brought you something." She took it gently and peeled back the brown paper. Inside was a faded army patch, olive green with black stitching. Below it an engraved plaque read, "For those who serve beyond the battlefield. Walter Hicks, 2nd Infantry, return." Lauren stared at it, speechless. "I carried that on every tour," Walter said, voice thick with emotion. "It kept me alive some days. But now I think it belongs to someone else who knows what it means to fight for people who can't fight for themselves." She looked up at him, unable to speak. She simply nodded and pulled him into a hug. For a man once lost in a system that forgot him, this was redemption. For Lauren, it was recognition deeper than any award could offer. That night, as she sat in her office alone, Lauren placed the patch in a shadow box and hung it right above her desk. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. Not her family, not the Senate. She had already built something far more powerful. A legacy of dignity, a future lit by justice, and a bridge no one could tear down. On a clear June afternoon, Lauren stood behind a makeshift podium set up in the community park just 2 blocks from her office. Folding chairs filled the lawn, streamers fluttered in the breeze, and the banner above the stage read, "Justice Bridge Community Tribute Day." She never would have approved the event if she'd known the full plan, but Jada and the team had kept it quiet until it was too late to say no. They called it a thank you. Lauren called it way too much fuss. But as she looked out into the crowd, her heart softened. There was Mrs. Mayfield, wearing a bright floral dress and clapping enthusiastically. There was Carl, the veteran who once refused help but now ran a support group in the basement of a local church. Even Walter Hicks sat in the front row, wearing that same crisp blazer, his cane resting against the side of his chair. To Lauren's surprise, her entire family had shown up too. Her father wore a navy suit, and his rare smile, the kind Lauren remembered from when she was little, before her career became a source of tension. Danielle arrived in jeans and no makeup, having driven straight from her clinic, and stood quietly beside Emma. And Mark even offered to sponsor free legal services for one client each month, courtesy of his firm. Emma had been the one to convince them to come. Lauren's eyes found the little girl near the front, holding a handmade sign that read, "My aunt helps heroes." Jada stepped to the mic and tapped it twice. "All right, everyone. I promised Lauren we wouldn't embarrass her too much. But today isn't about titles or degrees. It's about someone who fights every day, not for praise, but for people. Please welcome our bridge to justice, Lauren Carter." The applause was thunderous. Lauren approached the podium slowly, scanning the faces in the crowd. So many she had helped, so many who now helped others. Her voice trembled as she began. "When we first opened Justice Bridge, we didn't have funding, we didn't have furniture. Honestly, we barely had working lights. What we had was conviction. And what we've built, what all of you have built, is proof that conviction can be louder than money and stronger than any title." A beat of silence, then she added softly, "4 years ago I was told I was throwing away my career, that helping people one by one would never be enough. But today, when I look at this crowd, I see veterans, mothers, students, neighbors, friends, and I realize we haven't just helped people. We've built a movement." More applause, some cheers, even a few tears. She looked directly at her father, whose eyes glistened with emotion he didn't bother hiding anymore. Success isn't always about who claps for you at the table. Sometimes it's about who you pull up a chair for. As she stepped down from the podium, Emma rushed up and threw her arms around her. "You're the coolest person I know," she whispered. Lauren laughed and held her tight. Across the lawn, a small brass band struck up a joyful tune, and people began to mingle, eating potluck food, sharing stories, and writing thank you notes on a giant banner for the center. Later that evening, As the sun dipped behind the buildings and the crowd began to thin, Lauren stood quietly by the edge of the park. The air smelled of barbecue and fresh-cut grass. Warm, alive. Jada walked over and nudged her. "Still think it was too much fuss?" Lauren smiled. "Maybe not. Maybe just enough." In that moment, she realized the truth. She hadn't just proven her worth. She had transformed her corner of the world. And somehow, along the way, helped others find the courage to do the same.